Hi, this is Red.
This is Casey.
And this is All Walks of Film. Today we're talking about Mad Max and Anita Sarkeesian.
Yeah, and I want to make a quick note real quick that from now on, I'm going to make a conscious effort, at least on my part, to not talk about Anita Sarkeesian in terms of Gamergate, because really the stuff I say about her has nothing to do with what Gamergate is. So this is a good example of that. We're talking about her completely away from that, and her just as a media critic, which is her job, so cool.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, she tweeted about Mad Max. This is what she had to say after seeing it.
So this is directly quoted from Feminist Frequency, her Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one to shy away from expressing unpopular opinions, so here it goes. I saw Fury Road. I get why people like it, but it isn't feminist. On the surface, Mad Max is about resisting a cartoonish version of misogyny, but that resistance takes the form of more glorified violence. Fury Road is different from many action films in that it lets some women participate as equal partners in a cinematic orgy of male violence. Feminism doesn't simply mean women getting to partake in a typical badass guy stuff. Feminism is about redefining our social value system. Sometimes violence may be necessary for liberation from oppression, but it is always tragic. Fury Road frames it as totally fun and awesome. As a film, Mad Max absolutely adores its gritty future, and the camera caresses acts of violence in the same way it caresses the bride's bodies. "We are not things" is a great line, but it doesn't work when the plot and especially the camera treats them like things from start to finish. Mad Max's villains are caricatures of misogyny, which makes overt misogynists angry, but does not challenge more prevalent forms of sexism. Viewers get to feel good about hating cartoon misogyny without questioning themselves or examining how sexism actually works in our society. It makes me profoundly sad that mainstream pop culture now interprets feminism to mean women can drive fast and stoically kill people too. We're starved for representations of powerful women, but we need to reimagine concepts of power and move beyond the glorification of violence.
End quote. Alright, so let's sort of take this piece by piece in what she's saying. Okay, so she saw it and she doesn't like it. Cool, that's fine. That's totally fine. She doesn't really like stuff with violence, which for a personal preference is fine, but it's kind of a bias that she seems to have as a media critic, which is okay if she can actually, say that. But more to her actual criticism of this, let's talk about her criticism of the violence part. She says that the violence is glorified, that violence begets violence. She admits that yes, sometimes it's necessary to have violence to overthrow systems, but it's always tragic, and Mad Max just seems like awesome fun from beginning to end.
Mad Max raises the issues of violence being tragic, and in fact, lots of people die. And it's hard when people die.
Yeah.
In the film.
A lot of it, for me, I got a lot of feeling from the violence of, gripping, just,
well, you were
sort
enjoying
of feeling.
it, too.
I was enjoying it as a spectator, yes. But it wasn't like I was like, oh, all of that is badass and awesome. A lot of it was just like, ooh, just like, even when other people died, it was kind of just like, wow, that's really brutal. Like, I kind of feel this way about action violence. I think action violence is actually a little bit more glorifying of violence because you don't show blood and death and all that sort of stuff. You make it seem fun and harmless. I think actually showing the brutality of violence makes it a little bit more solid. But yeah, I'm sorry, but in that final action set piece when people were dying on both sides, that wasn't really as much fun as just really sad. There was a lot of really sad stuff in that last bit. And maybe she wasn't really that invested, or she wasn't really paying attention to that part, or she just doesn't have the same feelings that maybe a lot of the people who do like the movie have.
Or she might be the type of woman, which, let's face it, there are people like this, that cover their eyes during the scenes of action. If you do that with Mad Max, you will be punished for that, because the story is told through its action.
Right, exactly. A lot of stuff about personality and character comes through with that. But
so that's my only understanding of how she actually consumed it. She must have had her hands over her eyes while she was watching the movie.
But especially when it came to the deaths of a lot of the, good characters, and by good I mean not evil, there was a lot of gravity to the violence that happened to them and to their deaths. There was a lot of gravity to that, and it seemed pretty tragic.
Right, and going on to her comment about stoicism, I mean, like, Mad Max gets punished for his Max Rockatansky gets punished for his stoicism.
Yeah, every time he tries to run off and do his own lone wolf thing, he gets punished for it. And this is the reason why
to the point where he's, like, literally on top of a fucking car being used as a human blood bag. Right. And yeah.
The reason why I'm a little confused why Anita Sarkeesian doesn't like this movie is because she said in a lot of her videos video games tropes versus women series that she really wishes that more media would impart a message to men and boys about cooperation and teamwork and coming together for a common good, which is Mad Max's entire story arc in the movie, is him learning how to be a part of the group.
Well, not only Max, but Nux as well.
Nux as well, especially because he went from sort of a blind believer to being able to think for himself.
Right.
Which was also very interesting. And the other thing, too, is the women, the wives, they all, and not even them, but all of the women in the cast, they're all helpful, and they're all a part of a team. They're not all violent. A lot of them are pacifists, and they all have very different views, and they spend a lot of the movie talking to each other about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and all these different things. But everybody is a valuable team member who can come together and work in what they are comfortable with. I thought that was really good. It's not like every female character was just an equal amount of kick-ass, badass, I can tote guns and kill people sort of thing. A lot of people, in terms of the female cast, were pacifistic and still valuable.
Right.
I thought that was a really important message to get out of the movie, too. And that seems like the sort of thing she would like.
Right, and, I mean, granted, some of the women are sexualized, but the reason why they're sexualized is because they're literally,
breaking free from their sexual oppression.
Exactly.
Yeah, going to the part where she says, the camera caresses the body of the wives. Okay, they are skinny. They are model skinny. I'm not going to shy away from that fact. And normally I wouldn't like that either. Except for the fact that most of the people in the world, except for the milking mothers and Injun Joe himself, or Immortan Joe himself, they're all skinny. Because they're all starving. They're deprived of water. And I know they're eating well and they have water, but they're still being mistreated. They probably don't get the normal American diet sort of body shape. It makes a lot of sense in that world for them to be skinny, because everybody's skinny. I'm sorry, Tom Hardy is not like hulked up like Chris Hemsworth or anything either. He's kind of scrawny in the movie too.
Well,
which makes sense.
Well, also the women are handpicked for Immortan, so of course he has like standards that he wants the women to be in.
Right, and even if you're talking about standards and beauty, that's a pretty varied look between everyone. It's not like they're all blonde, blue-eyed, 6 foot tall. They all have different body types, and they all are different ethnicities, which is a little almost unrealistic, but it's good if you're trying to get that sort of demographic in your movie.
Right. Well, I mean, Lenny Kravitz's daughter's hot. So.
Right. But also, you see almost no nudity, and the only time you do, it's not sexualized.
Well, actually, to be fair, you see what I would call PG-13 nudity, where the woman's on top of the tower.
Yeah.
Are you talking about that?
That's the only time you see nudity.
Oh no, you see. You also see the milkmaids. You see breasts.
Yeah, but you don't see nipples.
Yeah, you do.
No, because there's like stuff covering it. The suction cups.
Well. Yeah. Okay. But I could have sworn I saw
maybe
fat nipples.
Yeah.
But
there is one shot in the movie that I think was more about the water than how sexy they were. But
where they were pouring water on themselves?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was way more about the water than about them looking hot. But even if that's the case, and you want to point to that one shot, that is one shot in the whole movie.
Oh, but to Anita Sarkeesian, that's like the equivalent of like a wet t-shirt contest.
For one shot in a movie where you have old ladies gardening as your main action stars, that's pretty cool. Also,
Imperator Furiosa. Tell me how she's objectified.
Ever.
Yeah,
but
so
she never says that. She only says the wives are sexualized.
Okay, because she can't.
Right.
You know, I guess she wanted all the characters to look like Imperator.
Yeah, even though she didn't want them to be violent, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing, Anita. If you're going to criticize video games, and if you're going to go to E3, don't say shit like, oh, I can barely watch Doom. Why is there so much violence? It's fucking Doom. Like that game came out in like 1993, and like it was like talked about like how violent it was and everything like that. Like it caused a lot of controversy back then, but like no fucking shit. It's fucking Doom.
Right.
You know, and also like you go into an action movie and then you get mad that it's fucking violent? How the fuck does that work? What, do you want to watch... I guess you want to watch action movies that are like the Hunger Games, you know, where it's PG-13 and yeah, it's violent, but everything's shown off camera, but then you're going to complain about other things shown off camera.
Right, like all of the sexual oppression that happens to the wives is talked about and alluded to and not shown ever once.
Yeah, unless you read the comic, which does have a little bit of that, right. But not a lot.
But also, that's not part of the movie. Let's be fair. It's not part of the movie. And she's talking about the movie, so... the thing she said about we're not things, the plot treats the brides, or the wives like things, is bullshit. I'm sorry. Every single one of them is their own personality and has their own merits to bring to the table. They were all clearly defined different characters, and not just the wives. Every single female in the story was. And to that point, every character, period.
Well, and also speaking against that as well, she the tattooed woman, was she given a name? The older woman.
A lot of the older women didn't have names that I just noticed, so I'm not sure.
So the one at the beginning who was in the cell, said
her.
we will not give birth to your warriors or
warlords.
Something. Yeah.
Our sons will not be warlords.
Right. So I mean, you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. Like and the thing that frustrates me is many people can say, oh, just ignore Anita Sarkeesian. You don't need to pay attention to Anita Sarkeesian. Well, the truth is that it's feeding into everything else. And until people speak up and say, hey, you're wrong about this point, you're wrong about this point. I'm not saying she's bad as a person. I honestly want to criticize her for what she says, because if it's going to feed into my college education, if it's going to feed into everything I look at online, if I listen to Film Spotting and start hearing it, like, I get so annoyed with it. Sorry,
It's okay. The other thing, too, that I think is really interesting is that her own definition of feminism is men and women are equal. That is feminism. Okay. She says in this movie that men and women are treated as equal. She says she says some women, but some women participate as equal partners in an orgy of male violence, whatever. But she says that men and women are treated as equal. And yet, that's not feminism because violence.
apparently, according to her, mm-hmm. Every fucking movie about feminism needs to be about fucking suffrage. Like, holy fucking shit. It needs to be about suffrage. It needs to be about, like, women trying to fucking, like, gain some social fucking thing. And I'm sorry, that's limiting to fucking storytelling. It's not... it's not relevant for all stories.
Well, I just think she misses a lot of the point of the movie, because in the movie, the society they live in treats every person as literal cogs in a machine. You see this. And the whole point of the movie is liberation from that sort of mentality. What's wrong with that? She says, oh, well, the stuff in this movie doesn't apply to our direct society, therefore it's not... Because she said later, towards the end of her review, that, oh, well, this doesn't really break through the meanings of our own sexism and misogyny in our society today, which, an action movie has no necessary reason to do. Even a feminist one doesn't really need to do that.
Yeah, action movie just has to have good action.
Yeah, exactly.
But this movie is more than just an action movie.
Exactly, yeah. But I believe it does in a very visual, not spelling everything out with you in terms of dialogue sort of way. Yeah. You do have to pay attention, but it's all there. You just need to listen and watch. That's it. Right.
And as a media critic, you need to understand the type of media that you're watching and understand it in its context. If you don't like violence, don't watch violent things. But also, at the same time, you're a media critic, so if you can't consume that, you are not the best person to talk about, that sort of thing. You can either talk about how it is either not feminist, and that be your point, but when you also say that it's not feminist, that it is feminist, but, it's too violent and somehow that's, your idea gets muddled with that. Mm-hmm. It's like a double negative. It just doesn't work. Like, logically, it doesn't work.
I agree. She said multiple times she doesn't like violence. I don't understand how you think a media critic is a good job if you can't see violence in the context of a story. Right. And every time you see violence, you say, oh, that's bad. I don't want to see that. Stop showing that.
Well, and that's the majority of video games, too. Because she does...
It's video games, but also this movie, Mad Max, is condemning a lot of violence. Yeah, the action is pretty cool and it's done very well, but there is a lot of specifically stated, talked about among the members of the movie, hey, these are the problems with violence. Hey, why can't we get above issues of violence? So yes, it shows violence, but it condemns it at the same time. What is your problem?
Even with the biker
what's
chicks.
Wrong with that?
Remember when the white-haired chick, I forget what her name is, but the white-haired chick told one of the biker chicks,
oh, aren't you above that yet?
Exactly.
Yeah. But all of them talk among themselves about the problems of using violence. It's talked about. It's there. And just because violence is shown, or even if you go there in certain media, it's just because rape is shown, does not mean that it's fetishized. Mm-hmm. It does not mean that it's not making a point of that it's not good or it's bad or there's a fundamental problem with it. You need to actually just understand context.
And say what you will about Anita Sarkeesian as a person, because honestly, I'm sick and tired of people going there for her as a person. She is a media critic, and I'm going to treat her as such.
Exactly, yeah. I agree.
And everyone else should too. If she's a media critic and she's criticizing things, when you don't agree with her, since apparently she doesn't want to bring up a dialogue when people disagree with her, make the dialogue.
Right.
Talk among yourselves and state points. Try not to use the type of dialogue that pisses her off. Like, if you use dialogue calling her a bitch, calling her, that kind of stuff, it just feeds into...
Well, also, it hurts your own argument. Let's face it.
Yeah.
It just makes you look bad.
Yeah, it makes you look like the sexist, misogynist asshole that she believes you are. Right. So, when criticizing her, try not to be the sexist, misogynist asshole that she will see you as, with the type of dialogue that just fumes from anger directly.
Or, if you want to criticize her, just be a woman, because then she won't say anything about you. I'm sorry, I have immunity. We have the same genitalia, so she won't say that I'm saying anything bad about her. Just ignore that. Maybe she'll talk about you, but I'm immune, so there you go.
So what do you guys think? Do you think Anita Sarkeesian was fair in her approach to Mad Max? Do you think that feminism needs to be apparent in all films? You know, whether it be action films or whatever.
Oh, we're going to plug into the description box. I am not a fan of the Mary Sue. Really, I'm not, but I do read a lot of their articles because I don't agree with them, honestly. I'm not a fan of the nostalgia chick either. I just don't really like her work that much. It's not very appealing to me. But Lindsay Ellis actually wrote a fantastic article for Mary Sue that I agreed with 100%, saying, let's stop just asking if media is feminist as like a point of, does that make it good or bad? It was a brilliant article. I agreed with it 100%. I thought it was fantastic. So we'll plug that in the description box too, just to give credit where credit's due and spread it around, but also as sort of you can take your own time to expand on some things we talked about. So A+.
And also, if you're frustrated with media not being feminist or whatever, possibly support the people that do, or become one yourself. You know, become a director, you know, write scripts. They might not get accepted, but work hard for it.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah, give it a shot. I mean, we might get something great that is both pro-feminist and something that even Anita Sarkeesian could actually appreciate. Yeah. I have yet to know what that is, but I would like to
Buffy.
see it.
That's the one thing I know for a fact she really likes is Buffy. That's it.
Thanks for listening.